Fine, how are you?
Couldn't be better.
That's my original line. I'm glad I left it open so you could take it.
Hey, if you leave the door open, I'm gonna walk through.
Try never better. That's even
Never better.
never
I
better.
can work with that. If I ran her better, they'd have to continue me on the next person.
We should be in person, I think.
We don't have a quorum.
I know.
No, we do
It's
not.
okay.
This could be a problem.
I'm sure it's only momentary. No time to panic.
Yeah, it's 7 o'clock and 20 seconds.
No, it's the 15-minute rule, where there's two 15-minute rules. One, 15 minutes go by and you wait another 15 minutes. The second 15-minute rule it's the Zach Morris 15-minute rule, where if the teacher doesn't show up within 15 minutes, you leave.
Yeah, you're out of there. You bet.
I'm dating myself on that one with the Zach Morris reference, I know.
Yeah, I was gonna say I actually don't know who that is, but
I don't
great.
either.
Zach Morris? Really? Oh, I'm
No.
so...
I know who Mercury Morris is or was. I think.
No. Zach Morris.
Sir, I got you on the
Chief.
Zach Morris. I got you.
Yeah, you're about the same age. Yeah, it was the
I
Zach
was-
Morris.
This
Yeah.
this might be a Boston
Saved
thing.
by the Bell. Saved by the Bell.
This might be a Boston thing. He's
The
from Detroit.
greatest TV show ever.
Okay, now that is a falsehood. That I'm calling you out on. That is not the best TV show ever.
Me too.
It's
I'm
the
in line.
greatest
I'm in
Because
line.
you know what it is? Yeah, the best TV show ever was Silver Spoons.
Silverstones.
Silver Spoons.
Silver
What's
Spoons.
Silver Spoons? Wait,
Isn't that-
Ricky Schroeder?
Isn't that the one with what's his name?
Home shopping net. Home shopping.
No, that
Network.
was
Yeah,
that
thank you,
was
Ricky
that was
Schroeder.
Ricky Schroeder.
Yeah.
Ricky Schroeder.
All right.
Oh, Ricky Schroeder. No.
Magnum PI. MASH.
No.
Mannix.
Seinfeld.
Maybe. Getting closer, I think.
Although watching the reruns of Fresh Prince now, kind of,
Rick's gonna want a piece
I
of
don't
this.
know.
Best
Yeah,
TV show ever.
Rick's definitely a
Rick,
technical
go ahead.
guy. Interesting side fact. Rick, show him if you got a picture of your dad handy at some point, take a look at Rick's dad, who's no longer with us. He's with the Heavenly Choir, but look at him and say who he reminds you of. You can start to see it in Rick a little bit, like it's starting to show up in him and his brother, but you got to see his dad. It's amazing.
Yeah, he looks like somebody very famous.
He does. The first you look
brother?
at it.
In fact, my father was getting mistaken in restaurants for this guy, and the guy had been dead for 20 years.
Huh.
So it was pretty funny. Well, that doesn't sound funny, but you know.
Right.
When you just see
Not
his
funny,
face,
haha, funny, odd.
Right. Okay, guys.
Wait, I tuned in. I just heard 20 years.
No kidding.
just hang on. We'll bring you up.
Oh, yeah.
Sit tight, Alicia.
I like
Looks
that.
just like you.
Rick's father. Okay.
Hold on.
so-
Here's my dad in the 1970s.
Yep,
Sideburn.
doing the Elvis
Love the
thing.
tops.
So
The
Rick,
guy-
I think
Show-
you want
show
to
him the
grow
other
their
one, Rick.
sideburns.
Watch
He
this.
got
Watch this.
he got mistaken. my
called-
father.
That's called
My
a
mother
Rick.
looks like a second wife. There's no genetics there.
Your mother was a beautiful woman, man.
She's still
That's right.
in. 82.
And she's inside and out, yes. But we're holding the public safety and transportation.
Recording in progress.
Which
Are we
we
really?
need to do, yes, and we need to do, and I want to be respectful of your time and the public's time and
I
our staff
apologize.
time.
Chris
Here
got
we
me.
are. It's blame it on my vice chair here. So,
No, I did
well,
start it, but it was well worth the 3 or 4 minutes we spent on it. So,
Thank you.
next time we'll meet in person so you guys can share family photos less publicly. So it's the Wednesday, March 22nd, regularly scheduled meeting of the Public Safety and Transportation Committee. With me at the start of the meeting is Councillor Lucas from Ward 2, Councillor Oliver from Ward 1, Vice Chair Markowitz from Ward 4, Councillor Lipoff from Ward 7, Councillor Bowman from Ward 8. I'm sorry, from Ward 8, Councillor Bowman from Ward 6. And I was just looking at 6 next to you and thinking 7, 6, right? And Councillor Grossman from Ward 7. Also with us at the start of the meeting, besides our trusty clerk, Delaney, we have Fire Chief Gentile and Police Chief Carmichael. Welcome everyone, and including New TV. Okay, our first item is number 7623. Requesting authorization to petition the general court to allow the mayor to appoint retired firefighters to be able to perform fire details and to perform dispatch duties. That I am assuming is you, Chief Gentile.
Yep, thank you, Counselor. So we're looking for special legislation to add retired firefighters to our detail and our emergency dispatch overtimes, which these are two positions that we see potential shortcomings in the future. So we're looking to add to that the bank of resources that we can use to fill those 2 slots. Details have increased as the work in the city has increased, and we are continuing to try to help our dispatch center out as much as we can. So we want to make sure that we have the as many resources as we can to fill those positions.
Would you kindly remind us of what a fire detail entails?
So basically, I think there's really 2 main details that we do. There are some other smaller ones, but the 2 main ones we do are welding details. So anytime there's welding or hot work done in the city, we need to have a fire detail there. Also, we do some when an occupied building loses their fire alarm system for whatever reason, malfunction of some sort. We can provide a fire detail there to basically act as a short-term fire alarm system to make sure that if there's any issues in the building, we get notified right away.
So a human fire alarm.
Basically, yes.
Okay. Any questions from the committee? Councillor Bowman.
Yeah, I would just add, I know that in my ward, we had a fire detail when there was a tricky blasting situation going on, and it, I don't know how much of it was pressure from the neighbors who were pushing back, or it was a request of the state fire marshal, but I do know that there was a fire detail there when the blasting was happening. So I think certainly, expanding this pool of people who can be available for those 2 would be a great idea. Can you tell me, is this something that has been requested by other communities? And are we at the point where we should be asking our state legislators to just allow this to happen in any community that wishes, as opposed to us having to petition the state community by community?
That's a good question. So the blasting is definitely another detail we do. A little less frequent than those other two.
Yeah.
We do some EMS details. There's a few other details that we do as well, but definitely the blasting. I'm not aware of any other communities that are doing this. It doesn't mean that they're not. I just personally am not aware of those. This is something I think we saw the police department do a couple years ago. I think they've had some success, so we think it's a good idea. And to be clear, we're not struggling to fill either one of these positions now, but we do see we're kind of looking towards the future and making sure we're expanding that pool
So,
to.
yeah, one last question is, you know, I know the details that we frequently have an issue filling, which are some of the road details. Is that this not, would that be another position that we could be looking at retired firefighters for road details?
This does not address the road details at all. That is a police specific, according to I think the laws we have here in Newton.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Councilor Lucas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. How you doing, Chief? Quick question on this particular detail. Will this make any difference in the department asking for additional overtime dollars as they do every year, I think in the spring or summer?
So this will not affect, these details get paid out of a actually by the contractor that's required to get these details. So this doesn't have any effect on the overtime monies.
Okay, thank you. That's all I had. This is fine. I'll be happy to vote for this.
Very good, Councilor Markowitz.
Just a quick question, Chief, and thanks for coming in. I also think this makes perfect sense to me too. Where does it, if once the council approves this, where does this go for the next, what do you see the decision process, or who else is going to have to vote or allow this to happen?
So it's got to go to special legislation at the general court. So it's through the state. To be perfectly honest with you, I'll be curious to see how this plays out as well. First time that we've done something like this since I've been in a leadership role. So I'll be working with Jonathan Yao and to get this to the state and try to get it approved.
Okay.
This is essentially home rule legislation, correct?
Yeah. I'm saying it's even though it makes a lot of sense, it's still probably a slog to get there. It's nothing because one last question. Would these just be? I assume you would validate their training and all. They would be appropriate to the job and all that. Is this restricted to just retired Newton firefighters, or is it a bigger population than that?
Newton firefighters.
Just Newton firefighters. Okay, great. I think it sounds like a good idea. I'm all for it. Thanks. Thank you, Chair.
Excellent. Thank you. Councilor Oliver.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, Chief. I'm just kind of curious because this makes all the sense in the world to me. Is this what I think I heard you say a minute ago? Is this is meant to kind of augment, right, your ability to kind of cover these shifts, if you will, or these sorry, losing my train of thought. This is meant to augment the pool of people that you have available to take care of these details, correct? It's not offsetting any work, in other words.
No, they would, operationally they would go once the detail or dispatch work is offered to the active firefighters.
Got it. And then my last question would be, do you have a sense of how many retired firefighters are still in Newton who would be eligible, roughly?
Yeah, so I have probably a half dozen that know about this that contact me.
Okay.
So I know we're at least at that number. It's tough to put a number on the total until get some information out to the retired population and see who's interested. But I know there is some interest, so that's why I think this is important to move forward with.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. I appreciate it. And when the time is right, I'm happy to move it.
Excellent. And I have to say, just an observation that we have retirees in good enough health to do details and dispatch for us is great news. And I hope it's because of the actions that the city has done so far to protect our firefighters from on the job hazards, which, as we know, are legion. So I think I have a motion from Councillor Oliver. I will take this on a voice vote unless there's opposition, in which case we'll go to a roll call vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any noes? Any abstentions? I believe that's 7-0 because we're missing Councillor
Yes,
Malik.
you're correct.
Right, she said she'd be late. She's going to the Gaff pool meeting, so in with the swimmers. Thank you very much, Chief. The next item,
Thank you, councilors.
have a good evening. You're welcome to stick around if you want. The next item is 10923. Shame they didn't take me up on that invitation. Request to transfer 450,000 to traffic safety regular salaries. This is to fulfill the City of Newton's 2 3-year agreements with AFSCME 2913, spanning fiscal year 19 to 21 and fiscal year 22 to 24. Chief, can you first of all just make clear to us which staff we're talking about, and then I assume you're explaining this.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. We're essentially talking about the parking control officers, and they have. When I first came here, they were several years behind already on their contract, and what this is doing is bringing their previous 3-year contract as well as the current 3 years that they're in being ratified and everything for our parking control officers. This brings, this will bring them into, actually, let me just check the FY. So the 3-year collective bargaining agreement was covering FY 2019. We're going back to FY 2019 to FY 2021, and then FY 22 to FY 2024. And so this includes the parking control officers as well as our traffic supervisors, which are also known as our crossing guards.
Crossing guards. Okay.
Yeah, and this is huge because, like I said, they've been working without contracts for quite some time, and I have to applaud the union and as well as the city departments for helping us get these contracts done. We've been able to do the same with our dispatchers and NPSOA, and currently working on our police association and MPA as well. So this is basically to cover the costs associated with the wage increases.
Excellent. I was hoping that it was more than PCOs. I was hoping it was crossing guards. All right. Any questions from the committee? Councilor Grossman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chief, could you just make clear how many individuals we're talking about? And the reason I ask is that the last time that we had one of these items where we transferred money to bring folks up to date, both in their previous contract as well as their new contract, we had some members of the council who got skeptical of large looking numbers and really wanted to understand exactly how many people we're talking about, I see in the agreement that overtime is baked into this as well, but, and I'm sure we can discuss it more fully at finance. I just want to make sure that everybody is square on the math.
Yeah, sure. So the contract calls for 3% COLA increases over that 6-year period. And it covers our 10 full-time parking control officers, as well as we're staffed for 50 crossing guards. We're usually hovering beneath that because it's been very difficult to fill positions and all across the board, whether it's police officer, dispatchers, crossing guards. It's just been it's been a real big challenge on staffing. So we usually fluctuate. We're anywhere from 40 to 50 in that range.
Are there any folks who are due compensation under this that are no longer employed by the city of Newton?
There probably would be a few, yes.
Okay, so I think
As
just
far
when
as
you come.
parking control officers or no?
Either. I just want to make sure that when this item comes to finance, that we're crystal clear on, like I said, precisely the number we're talking about, because I think a few people may sit there with calculators doing the math, wanting to see how much money this means for different people and making sure that the agreement makes sense. And
Right.
it looks to me like it does, but I would just be prepared in case that line of questioning is asked.
Yeah, sure. And like I said, it is the 10 full-time parking control officers that are still there, as well as the range of up to 50 of the crossing guards who are part-time, but still part of that number.
And I assume some of that money, at least the forward-looking money, accounts for vacancies that we have that we would be paying at that level should we fill those positions and hire those folks. But should those remain vacant, those funds still sit aside until such time as those positions are filled. Is that accurate?
Yes, and the going forward, it will obviously be budgeted for the upcoming contracts, will be budgeted each FY year until 2024.
Okay, thank you very much.
So, yep, so we've accounted for that for FY this coming year, FY 20, which will be to FY 2024, but we've accounted for that. That will go into the budget to cover the costs associated with the COLA increases.
All set? Okay.
I am. I'm just trying to stay muted because it is mass chaos behind me in my house. So I don't know if you guys can hear voices and piano and all that.
Not a thing. Not a thing. I hear nothing.
Okay, good.
Councillor Markowitz, followed by Councillor Bowman.
Thank you, Chair. I think the last exchange between Councilor Grossman and the chief may have answered my question, but let me ask it anyway. So this is all funding forward. When I hear union, or is it not? If it's not, okay, I see Councilor, I see Chair.
Now read the memo. It says that this pays for 19 to 21.
That's what I thought. Okay, so I got confused by something that was said here. So this is kind of a technical question, and maybe Councilor Grossman can just take this back to finance. This actually is not something in the current year budget, but something that was funded in prior years that was held in a reserve. So even though it goes through the statements this year and it makes the actual numbers going through reflect this payment, the actual funding for this was previously expensed, in order to put it into a fund. So it was put into an asset account and now is being dispersed. I think that's how this is actually working, but I was just curious about that, because I know when I looked at the police, this is a different conversation on the police budget, but when I saw the year-over-year increase, I said, that's not all current expense. That's stuff that looks like current expense, but it's actually reserves that are being dispersed down because we're a cash basis operation. It shows up that way, so I'm just confirming that understanding.
And we're going back to FY 2019, so that's retroactive. You know, where we didn't have contracts that were agreed upon at that point, all the way up until now. We're retroactively going back.
But the funds,
Right.
the funds for that, some of those funds
Funds
came
kept
from
them.
prior year's budget, so it was sitting in an account,
Mhm.
I think. Maybe Councilor Gross.
Can I answer that?
That's
Yeah, thank
extremely unclear to me. So go
Yeah,
ahead.
no, that's exactly how it works. So our
Okay.
CFO, Ms. Lemieux, every year that we don't have a contract, puts aside in a wage reserve
That's
an
exactly
an
what I thought.
estimate, a guess of what it
Okay.
is that we're gonna owe.
Right.
Where I
The reason
think
this
the
is a-
math, gets confusing for folks is that when we add these COLA increases, we're paying the back pay, but then, you know, the math compounds on itself for
Right.
then what the going forward salary is. So when I was asking about the forward looking piece, I was essentially trying to get at the point that in our budget, every year, we budget for positions that go unfilled for the entire year.
Right.
And that's what I was trying to figure out in this math. Is there money in there for positions that will likely go unfilled over, 1 year or 2 years or whatever? And I'm gathering the answer is yes. But then when Ms. Lemieux hopefully joins the finance committee to dive into this, I think she always does a much crisper job than I can at explaining
Right.
how that all comes together. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I get it. I just was clarifying it because I think, again, just bear with me for 1 minute here, Chair. The reason this is kind of important is that when you look at the financial statements, not the budget, the actual financial statements, and you see what's expended, you can get a misleading idea of what actually was in the current year budget because you're dealing with something that's on a cash basis. But in fact, what happened was an accrual to provide for this in prior years. It's all good. It's all completely legit. But, if you read the numbers, you can get a distorted view of what the actual expenses are for that given year, attributable to that year because of how the accounting works. And again, this may be whatever, but I got my answer. I understand it. I think it's fine. So I'm cool.
Very
Thank
good. Counselor Bowman.
Thank you very much. So I guess, the biggest issue that we of course hear about the crossing guards is our difficulty in recruiting new crossing guards or additional crossing guards or backup for crossing guards when they're not able to be there. And I guess, we'll have a chance, we didn't, I think in this, I'm not sure if there was anything that happened in this. I was just reading the contract changes there that's necessarily going to help us recruit additional crossing guards, but I think that certainly should be thinking about the next contract and thinking about if there are ways, I know we've talked about this before, but our ability to use school personnel as crossing guards as well has been sort of complicated by both the school side and the contract with the union on the traffic supervisor. So it would be good to have a conversation and maybe a working group on some thoughts on how we can make that move forward. Just one question, and I'm sure this came up during the agreement and thinking about the raise for the crossing guards. How does the pay that we pay the crossing guards and our parking control officers compare to other communities? And if you don't know the answer, that's okay. Then I'm going to ask Councilor Grossman to add that to the questions for finance.
That's fair.
Yeah, I think that
That's
would be
fair.
good for us just to understand how the pay for the crossing guards and the parking control officers compares to other communities.
How do
And
we
we
measure?
usually do that through the process of
Yeah.
doing comps with other area departments. The staffing crisis, I would call it, is
Yeah.
pretty widespread. It's throughout the whole state, so we're all kind of in the same boat as far as that's concerned. It has been tough recruiting.
Yeah. So the last thing I'm just gonna say is about parking control officers is, you know, especially as I sit in the Commission on Disability and, you know, we have a holiday event every year that the police participate in to help enforce, parking in accessible parking spaces. And of course, you know, we think about the number, you know, drive around on a Saturday night and see how many people are parked on sidewalks and inaccessible spaces without placards and blocking crosswalks. And, you know, I would love to have a conversation about justifying more parking control officers, even when the meters aren't running, because I do feel like there's some areas that could use some assistance on weekends and holidays and other times, just to make sure that we are, and I have a feeling they'd more than pay for their salary, but it's, you know, it's also a matter of safety and so that's it. Thank you.
Sure, thank you.
Yeah, thank you all. Chief, for the budget discussion, I would be interested in figuring out how much our parking control officer pay line item is and how to compare that to our parking enforcement income, separate from the handicap parking spot income, which goes to the Commission on Disabilities to be used on projects, but just for the regular spaces. Again, not thinking of ways to pad the bottom line, but just about ways to pay for the services that we know we need anyway, which is parking management. With that, I will take a motion unless I have another hand.
I move to approve.
Motion to approve from Councillor Bowman. I will take it again on a voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any nays? Any abstentions? All right, we're on to our final item, which is returning to regular discussion with the police department. I know we say data, but what I thought in discussion with the chief earlier, we thought it would be a good time now to revisit police training and just get a status report on how many officers have been and you know, staff have been trained and in what kinds of things and what kinds of effects that is having on police operations.
Sure, thank you. I really appreciate you bringing this topic up because this is one of the most crucial, I think, items that the police department has been working very hard on, especially in light of police reform that passed a couple of years ago now, which had a lot of statutory requirements for us to meet. And I'm happy to say that our department has done an exceptional job in making sure that we've been doing all the appropriate training, as well as creating the policies that reflect the requirements of POST, or the Peace Officer Standards and Training Commission, which essentially oversees kind of all of the training and certification of police officers in Massachusetts now. Our training cadre is exceptional. I mean, they've done an incredible job in keeping us up to speed with everything and making sure that our officers are trained in all of the different requirements that we have now, which are a lot. So the way that I'm going to explain this is twofold. One is the statutory requirements that are under Mass General Law, Chapter 6E, which is the Peace Officer Standards and Training Law, or the police reform law, if you want to call it that. And then the other trainings that we've also been doing to kind of align ourselves with the Newton Police Reform Task Force recommendations, which I think we've done a really good job of kind of embracing all of that and making sure that our officers are trained in those categories as well. So under 6E, there's statutory requirements for us to have training, and some of the training, actually the training that all of our officers are involved with and receiving at this point include domestic violence and sexual assault investigations, hate crimes, public safety, technology. The technology piece is big because it's part of 21st century policing. The protection, care, and custody of children after a parent or a caregiver is arrested, bicycle safety, bias policing, de-escalation tactics, interactions with mental health or developmental disabilities. Our school resource officers now have to also, in addition to their police certification, have to be certified as school resource officers. And all of our youth officers within Community Services Bureau have all been through the training and successfully got through that. So they meet all the requirements necessary there. Working with people with intellectual disabilities, use of force, which I'll get into a little bit more on the next part of the presentation, but use of force was in Massachusetts was always basically followed under common law. And now because of Mass Chapter 6E, use of force is now a statutory thing that has oversight, like I mentioned, of the Post Commission, as well as training requirements from the Municipal Police Training Committee. And then mental health, wellness for police officers, suicide prevention, which again is another big piece because that is also part of 21st century policing. And with 21st century policing, there's 6 pillars, the last one being officer wellness, but many times, we find that that's one of the ones that's not given the attention really that it deserves. So we're really trying to work internally on our officer wellness training, but also the initiatives that we're kind of putting in place to make sure that the mental health of our officers is paramount too. So it's a stressful job, and we want to make sure that they're debriefed after certain situations, critical incidents, and that they're receiving the right care for themselves as well, because we need them to be healthy in order to help other people. So that's kind of the statutory side of things. Now, all of our policies now also reflect those training initiatives, so they kind of come hand in hand. We've made those changes in our policies and procedures, our general orders. And then the other side is some of the other training we've been doing aligns with the task force recommendations. The first one is active bystander and law enforcement. That was one of the recommendations that came out of the task force. It's also known as ABLE. ABLE training, officers who were trained from, one of the things I want to mention too real quick, our department is very self-sufficient. So we have such good, well-versed training officers, and we send them to train the trainer so that they can learn about topics and then come back and train the rest of the department. And so we're very self-sufficient in that manner, that we don't have to go outside a lot of times for much of our training. So the ABLE program, that was developed down in Georgetown University. Our officers were trained by Georgetown, and essentially what it does is it creates a culture. It supports a culture of duty to intervene, and trains our officers on de-escalation tactics, as well as a duty to intervene, and that active bystander mentality of stopping situations if they seem to be getting out of hand. Now, this is really nothing new to Massachusetts. However, it's something that we've refocused on, because if you go back to 1986, 1993, I think it was, Commonwealth versus Adams, it's a duty to intervene case that involved the Boston Police Department, where there was a situation that created kind of a case law for us here in Massachusetts on requiring a duty to intervene. And all of our officers are now trained in it. So we sent off 4 or 5 officers to get trained in the train the trainer, and now the entire department is trained in ABLE. The next one is integrating communication and tactics. It's short for ICAT. That is a use of force training program that's designed basically to teach our police officers how to respond to the very dynamic or evolving, volatile situations, and primarily when the person's unarmed. So we, as you know, we deal with a lot of, mental health crisis type calls, and sometimes dealing with those situations is a lot of erratic behavior, and they can become very volatile and dangerous. So this training is designed to make our officers make sound, critical decision making, and make those attempts to de-escalate and reach peaceful conclusions in some of these calls. So we're at about 120 of our officers are now trained in ICAT. Again, we have internal people that are trained in that program, and we're almost reached the entire department of training. And we will reach that probably by May of this year. The next one is the another task force recommendation was the One Mind campaign. And the One Mind campaign is a pledge for the department to do 4 things. One is to partnership with sustainable organizations, health organizations in the community. One is to develop policies and procedures that address mental illness and mental health response. Then training. The training piece is very big because it requires us to train 100% of our officers in mental health first aid, which all of our officers are now trained either in mental health first aid or the equivalent. So we've achieved that standard, and it requires us to have 20% of the department trained in crisis intervention training, which is the 40-hour mental health training that follows. You may have heard of like the Memphis model. It's very interactive training on dealing with crisis intervention. But going back to the partnership piece, in Newton, we have created a community crisis intervention team, and that team, we have collaborated with all of the other stakeholders in the community that are involved in the mental health crisis or mental health response. And those include Health and Human Services, the courts and the jail diversion program, coastal EMS, the police department. It also includes state agencies like Department of Mental Health, agencies such as Riverside, which we have embedded in Newton to help us with co-response to mental health crisis. Our social services, we have Springwell, Newton Wellesley Hospital. All of the stakeholders that are in the community that deal with these situations are part of the community crisis intervention team every month. And so this is evolving. It's a great, I think, thing that we have for Newton now. We have a little spin-off of that, having a new drug and alcohol prevention coalition, which will kind of, because many times people are dual diagnosed with substance use disorder and mental illness. And so we want to be, have a broad kind of approach on how we're dealing with things. So that it's progressing very well there. The policies, as I mentioned, the training, and I think it's important to recognize, so when officers go through the CIT training, which I've been to myself, we now have over 50 officers that have been to the 40-hour CIT training. So we've already exceeded that 20% threshold for the department. So we've essentially achieved the One Mind campaign, but we're not happy where we are yet. We want to still make more progress. Some of the topics that our officers are trained in, and I'll just go down some of them: mood disorders, working with emergency services, psychosis, hearing voices exercises, substance use disorder, behavioral health in children and teens. We do case studies, hoarding and clutter, elderly mental health, veterans, mental health trauma, working with the ER, autism, cultural considerations is built in. They also talk about CCIT, diversion programs, and de-escalation exercises. It's very substantial. It's good training. It's incredible to see the officers actually apply it on the street. So the next one is our TI simulator. As you know, about a year and a half ago, we purchased this simulator that provides tools to train our officers through simulated exercises. and they're put through a series of these exercises to hone their skills on how to deal with critical situations, including some might be mental health, some might, it's all different scenarios that we have. This was a very expensive piece of equipment. And we continue to use the TI simulator to bring the training that we've been working on into like a real life scenario. And it's incredible. And as we continue to train our officers in this, we will be sending out an invitation, very likely to city members, city council, if they would like to come down and see a demonstration or even participate in this simulator to see how it works and how the training works. And it's I think you'll be impressed with how it's what we're doing and how this works into the classroom portion of the trainings that we have. Leadership, we've been spending a lot of time sending officers to leadership training. It's crucial for the department and moving forward to have effective leadership. And, you know, I kind of look at it like this is, you know, someday when I retire, I'm hoping that the things that I'll be doing now will be helping the department years from now move in, you know, progress into the century. So if we have good, strong leaders in the department, that will put us in a very good place. We've sent a lot of our first line supervisors and command staff to leader training, FBI leader training. And there's a trilogy of supervisors, command staff, executive development. We just sent 5 officers to the FBI Command College. And then Captain Bill Spalding, he just got back from Quantico. He was down in Quantico for 10 weeks attending the FBI National Academy. I actually attended that academy in 2012, and it's one of the most incredible experiences for a police executive to participate in. And, you know, having talked to Billy, he learned a lot down there, and he's really excited about using this training, you know, coming back to the department and applying that leadership that he's learned, and it's going to be a really good thing. We've had command and executive development, high performance leadership for our sergeants and lieutenants, and then a lot of leadership training for our first line supervisors as well. One of the other things, this is also relative to the Newton Police Reform Task Force, was DEI training or organizational development. With community policing, which is, you know, we're embracing 21st century policing, and community policing is a component of that, but the organizational transformation is a very big piece of community policing, and having a department that is evolving into the 21st century by you know, best practices in policing and changing and transforming the department into, you know, what we want it to be in the future. And so we've teamed up with Jerry Cox. He's from Cox and Associates, and he is helping us provide and create a very comprehensive organizational development program. It's designed to improve customer service and build trust and development. But it also addresses other things like coaching, change management, team building, and improving the climate for diversity, equity, inclusion. And Dr. Cox has done a great job with Brookline PD, and we've brought him on, and he's already started to gather some of the cultural information within the department, and as well as working with the diverse group of officers that we have within the department to you know, get their take on things and get their feedback and apply that to the training that we're going to be doing. And then we have ALICE training. ALICE is an acronym for Alert, Lockdown, Inform, Counter, and Evacuate. It's basically a critical incident response program, but it's designed for not for so much for the police, but for our city employees, our schools, our city hall, different governmental institutions. And I am a huge supporter of the ALICE program because it is very fluid, and it's something that can work for a minor critical incident to the worst case scenario type of a situation. And we recently trained officers to be ALICE instructors, and we've started to train City Hall and the library. We've been training some of our houses of worship in the faith-based community for months now. And this is very good training for empowering employees and just people to make decisions during critical incidents so that they can, we can minimize the harm done. And this is going to be a very good thing for us as well. Use of force training, spend a little bit of time on that, because use of force training, as I mentioned, it is now statutory on how the police use force in Massachusetts. So we have to abide by all of the requirements of Chapter 6E, the police reform law. And we've really hit all of the benchmarks with our use of force training as well. So we've covered everything that's under 6E. There's a CMR, if you want to ever look it up, it's 550 CMR 6.00. That's the use of force CMR that basically promulgates the requirements from 6E. And it puts post the Peace Officer Standards and Training Commission, as well as the Municipal Police Training Committee, as a two-prong overseer of all the use of force and the use of force training. So now our officers are all trained in use of non-deadly force, use of deadly force, duty to intervene, use of force reporting structure that we have in place now. It gets into mass demonstrations, crowd control, de-escalation tactics, handling emergencies with involving mental illness, cultural competencies, and the progression of force, and the requirement to stop using force when the situation has been diffused. So there's a lot that goes into it, but this training has all been incorporated into our in-house training as well as our in-service training, which our officers have to have 40 hours of continuing training every year, minimum. Two of the other things we've been doing is our department needs to come in line with less lethal force options. Right now, our officers and over the past years, they have pepper spray, they carry pepper spray, they carry a baton. We do not, we have had the bean bag rounds, or the 12 gauge bean bag rounds, which I'm not a big fan of. And we don't have tasers or conducted energy devices, conducted energy weapons, however you want to refer to them as. So we've made two changes in the department that we've begun training on. And primarily this is only with the Superior Officers Union, and we'll continue to work with the patrol union to get these less lethal force options into their hands. But one is the 40 millimeter sponge round launcher. It's similar to the 12 gauge beanbag, less lethal device, but it's I believe it's much more effective, especially in dealing with assaultive or distraction techniques, de-escalation techniques. This is a state-of-the-art, like 21st century kind of device, and we've purchased them, and we are training on them now with the MPSOA. And then the second one, which is the conducted energy devices or tasers. We have too many situations where it turns into a hands-on situation, and we just recently had one where two of our officers were injured significantly and put out of duty. And I think that if we had other devices and other less lethal force options in our hands, that we would not be, we could avoid some of those situations. So that'll be something that we'll be bringing it online this summer for the MPSOA. And again, like I mentioned, we'll be working on the MPA. Just to cover some of the in-service training topics, like I mentioned, they have to have 40 hours of training every year. We've done defensive tactics, firearms training, CPR, defibrillator, administration of naloxone. We've done some breaching and dynamic entry, and that was a response to the Uvalde active shooter situation that occurred in the school. I haven't seen an after action review of that incident yet, but for some reason, they didn't make a dynamic entry, a breach into the classroom where, I'm not second guessing what they did because I don't know all the facts, but it's important that we can gain entry when we need to gain entry to any location. So we've been doing some breaching and dynamic entry stuff, legal updates, training on post, on hate crimes, on officer wellness, interpersonal violence, and many other things, dynamics of addiction, Alzheimer's, a lot of the mental health crisis, more focused training. And I think that kind of covers it.
Wow, that's a lot of training. Going to open it up to questions from the committee, if you don't mind. And then I have some just clarifying questions. All right, I have Counselor Lucas.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Chief Carmichael. And I do hope the two officers who were involved in that domestic violence incident are recovering.
Thank you.
We received the training document earlier this afternoon, so I've not had time to fully go through it. But the one thing that stood out, at least right now, looking at that, the one thing that stood out right now, was the less lethal force options. It's the 40 millimeter sponge round launcher. Is that, forgive me, is that what you, rubber bullets? Is that what it is?
The best way I can define it is, yeah, it's kind of, so a 40 millimeter means it's I would say like maybe about a baseball size. So there's a sponge round that's inside of it. It's a less lethal force option. And it's like a plastic or rubberized ball almost that gets projected out of the device. So if you can equate it to something like what we have now, or what we've had in the past, are these, they're a shotgun, and it's a shotgun that looks a little different than a shotgun. It's a different color and everything, but essentially works the same way. And it extracts a bean bag. And from my experience and just knowing some of the stuff within policing, I don't find them as effective as you would with a sponge round out of 40 millimeter that could potentially end a very volatile situation and de-escalating by using a less lethal option if that's available to us.
And are those devices, I don't want to say gun, but are those devices, in the police cruisers when the officers are out on patrol, or do you keep them stored at police headquarters?
Not yet. So these are not a device that would be issued to everybody. They would be kept in some of the cars, and right now only in patrol supervisor cars, because the MPSOA bargained with it, and they can now train and carry them. But we're right now, the reason why I put in the training bulletin here is because we just made the purchase, but we've got to train on them, and it's going to take a while to get through that training and get those deployed into the street at some point.
And just with maybe maybe I'm reading too much into it, but you have de-escalation in parentheses. Just me, is that a de-escalation tactic? A less than lethal equivalent shotgun, round, a beanbag round, is that considered de-escalation?
It is because and I'll use the recent incident that we had, right? So, oops, I just hit. Sorry. In the recent incident that we just had, we have a situation where when somebody tries to remove a police officer's firearm from their holster, that is a deadly force situation, right? When you're in a dynamic situation like that, it's not necessary to wait for the person to actually remove it from your holster. It becomes a deadly force situation when somebody tries to remove it. So when you have a deadly force situation, but you have a less lethal force option to use, then you are thereby de-escalating that situation. And this is a matter of, we ask our police officers to do a very difficult, challenging job where, they're left with making split-second decisions, and decisions that that'll be judged on by the totality of the circumstances. And it's incumbent on us to put the right tools and training in their hands to make sure that they can do that in the most effective way as possible. So in my view, the more tools and things that they have at their disposal, the better off they are and the better off our community is.
And just to be clear, this isn't rubber bullets. This isn't bean bags. This is a sponge type launcher, correct?
That's correct.
That's 40 millimeter. Yeah. But you had said that you had pretty much gotten rid of tasers. Looks like those are coming back in when you get that second bullet under less lethal force.
Yes, we have not had. So taser is a brand name. So like
yeah.
We call them. They call the variety of things: conducted energy devices, conducted energy weapons, tasers. They're called many times. They're referred to as. But again, these are other less lethal force options that we need to get into the hands of our officers. Like I said, right now, the less lethal force options we have are pepper spray and a baton.
Right.
And we have those shotgun beanbag devices as well.
That you said you're getting rid of. Yeah. Okay. Are you all set, Councilor Lucas? Right. And I don't see any other hands up. I had a couple extra questions on training on hate crimes as an in-service training topic, and officer wellness. Both of those caught my eyes. Can you give us a little more detail on that?
Sure. Well, I think that the statute chapter 6E had put in hate crimes into the training curriculum, and the requirement for us to put it into the training curriculum with MPTC, likely because of the uptick in what we've been seeing across the country, because we have seen a substantial increase in hate crimes occurring. And so they felt that it was a good training curriculum item to add into the in-service training. Mm-hmm. As you know, in Newton, there's a difference between a hate crime and a bias related incident. And I think we do a really good job of tracking both. If it's a hate crime, there has to be underlying issues of bias associated with another crime. So let's just say, spray painting someone's front door or something. You have the underlying charge of malicious destruction, but it's also bias related in what they may write or what their intent was. So we have to report all such crimes to the state, as well as track them and put them into a database. The bias incidents, we take that a step further in Newton, because we involve a working group that kind of looks at the incidents that we have, but we also track incidents of bias which don't have an underlying criminal element to it per se, but it's still something that we want to track and pay attention to, as not just as a law enforcement agent, but the schools or wherever these things may take place, so that we kind of have an understanding of how many incidents we're dealing with and what we can be doing to either prevent those from escalating or just be aware of what's happening and making sure that we're tracking data for it.
Yeah, good.
And what was the other one? So the other one was
Officer wellness.
hate crime. Yes, and so officer wellness, in the United States, more police officers die at their own hand than they do from line of duty death. It's more than double that amount. It's a stressful job. And as we know, mental health affects many people across every category, especially over the last few years. And it's become a real hot topic and something that we're focusing on. But there hasn't always been a real focus on officer wellness and their mental health and how they're doing. And especially when you look at the stressors of the job, many times it's not just one incident that a police officer goes to that can affect their mental health. It's the cumulative effect of going to domestic after domestic, call after call, over a period of time that essentially starts to deteriorate their well-being. And it's a reason why officer wellness is part of the 21st century policing pillars, because it's such an important issue. And like I said earlier, if the officer responding to the call isn't well, as far as their mental health, it makes it very difficult for us to help others. So we're trying to reduce the stigma of mental illness and mental health, and making sure that we're being proactive and making sure that they're healthy and their mind is healthy.
And I appreciate that. Councilor Bowman, you have your hand up.
Yeah, so one question I should ask is, so I believe on April 1st, the new road safety requirements go in, or so are the officers being, especially concerning safe passing distance for vulnerable road users. Have the officers been updated on that? Is there any plan from the police to help
Yes.
educate residents and motorists?
Yep. So we there's a few things. It's part of the in-service training because it's a law change. So under legal update, but it's also part of, even before that, under Chapter 6E, the chapter we're talking about that covers police reform, it includes bicycle safety as part of that mandate through MPTC. And we also internally have an officer that's assigned as to do bike safety, among our schools, and to have programs and stuff where we're teaching people the rules of the road as far as bicycle safety and that sort of thing. So,
well, it's
that's
bikes,
coming, yes.
it's pedestrians, it's people doing police officers on the side of the road, pulling someone over, and you just want to make sure everybody's passing you safely, right? So, and
Yep.
I just, concerned about that. Okay. Thank you very much.
at some point, we might want to have a discussion, maybe after Passover, on city and religious leaders, Asher training, Alice instructing. I'd be interested in that, and I think my colleagues might also. And it sounds like you're just getting started with Dr. Cox, but I'm glad to see that that is getting started. Had a couple just clarifying ones on active bystander and law enforcement able training. You have both all NPD officers trained and 100 trained. You want to clarify which that is? It's on your handout. That's why I had time to flag it.
Yeah. Yeah, so we started doing, that's probably because some of the stuff I copied probably from a previous one, so. But
So
yeah,
we were at
100
100 and
officers, I
we're
think
now
it's-
everybody. Okay, that clears it up.
Yeah, so because ABLE is part of our in-service training, so
Mhm.
as we have been doing in-service training, we're doing officers every time we do that, so. We've now covered, ICAT definitely we have everybody done, and active bystander will be done this term of in-service, which is next month, by the next month or so.
That's excellent. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. Otherwise, I will take a motion to hold.
My hand's up.
Oh, I'm sorry. I can't see the, top person. So you have to speak up if I ask for questions after a bit. Go ahead,
Oh, okay.
Councilor
All
Lucas.
right. Sorry about that. Chief, quick question, because I know it's been brought up before and it's not ready yet, but just when do you think we will see body cameras on the officers in Newton ballpark?
I think by the summer, the Superior Officers Union, through their bargaining, agreed to do a body camera pilot program. And so we've been working with Axon, which is the company that provides the body cameras. It just happens to be that the conducted energy devices that we're going to purchase are going to be through Axon as well. And so if at some point we get the body cameras from Axon that would integrate with the conducted energy weapons, so they actually can activate and everything and work off of that particular device. We did a pilot program because I think that there's places that have just gone and instituted a body-worn camera program and put it into effect. I'm very interested to see what the community input is once we do the pilot and we start to put them out there on the street. The pilot program would consist of 12 patrol sergeants, and myself and Superintendent McMeans would wear one as part of the pilot. But it's going to be very important, I think, to have the community's input, because it's easy to say that, we want body cameras and let's get them out there and have police officers recording these interactions with people until the point where they got to go into someone's living room or a domestic or a situation that the
And they
community may
haven't
feel
sorted their
differently about.
socks. Yeah, right. And
yeah,
they
so,
see everything else. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's something that we don't want body cameras to just be a decision of the police. We want it to be more of a community involved pilot that at the end we can kind of say, yes, this is, as a community, we do want this or we don't, and then make the decision then.
Thank you. Yep. Just wanted
set?
to see what. Yeah, I just wanted to see what the timetable was. That's all.
Excellent. I will take a motion to hold.
So moved.
Moved by Vice Chair Markowitz. All in favor, please say aye.
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 All right. Good work, everyone. Thank you, Chief. Thank you for coming in again. It's really interesting
Thank you all.
discussion.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Madam
night.
Chair.
Thanks, Chief. Good
Thank
night,
you.
everybody.
Good night.